Okay, all right, let's talk M2 MacBook Airs. Okay, so today, John Prosser, Apple Track, Sam Cole and those guys, they released some renderings or some images of the new M2 MacBook Air. M2? So for this video, we're going to be breaking down these images, seeing what we can get from it, as well as when we might see these devices, and I hope Apple's not doing what I think they're doing. I'm Chris Grant Jr., it's the Granite Geek Show. Also, before we get started, the AirTags just arrived to my house, so we'll be doing the giveaway for that. If you want to know the rules to enter the giveaway, go ahead and check out some of my other videos, specifically the ones titled Giveaway, for all the details and rules on that. So the new MacBook Air, it apparently comes in 7 colors, very similar to the 24-inch M1 iMac. It's got the M2 processor, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We'll talk about that in a second. But let me just stop you, because look at the biggest change to the MacBook Air. The tapered edge is no longer there. It no longer slopes down at all. And this is a big design mistake in my opinion, because it's one of the things that is not only iconic from the whole envelope when they pulled out the first MacBook Air, but it also is not visually distinct anymore from the regular MacBook Pro, as those keep getting thinner and thinner. Now, of course, I do like what Apple has been doing in differentiating their consumer level products with their prosumer and pro level products via colors. So like we saw with the 24-inch M1 iMac, we saw it with the iPad Air last year, the iPad Air 4, which came in very similar colors, and now it seems that we'll be seeing it with the MacBook Air. And that wedge shape is just so iconic to the MacBook Air, and now they've essentially made the MacBook Air look like the MacBook again, which was discontinued. But you know what? I don't care. This is their consumer level stuff. Consumers don't care. White bezels, anyone? It's just not important, apparently, to people who aren't doing pro work. They don't care about white bezels, and it makes sense because the iPhones have been selling with white bezels on their silver models for years and years and years now, and consumers generally don't complain about that. Now, as far as release date, nobody really knows for sure, but we know that there are 2 events pretty much left in the year for Apple besides surprise events. That is WWDC 2021, which is mainly supposed to focus on software, although we have seen hardware in the past, and of course the big iPhone event at the end of the year, typically in September, but sometimes even later. And while some may argue that these M2 MacBook Airs won't be released at any major event, they might just be released alongside the AirPods 3 or Apple Music Hi-Fi, there's a big change happening. It's not just with color and form factor, but this is the introduction of the M2, or it might be called M1X, who knows what it'll be called, but this next generation processor. And this is kind of where I have my main problem, is when you're introducing a new chip that's going to be more powerful than any M1 device out there, including the new iMac, people are going to start looking like, why didn't you just put the M2 chip in the new iMac? It just came out a month ago. You're telling me you couldn't have done that? Number 2, you're going to have certain prosumers and professionals looking at the M2 MacBook Air like, well, man, I just bought the M1 MacBook Pro last year, and it's already being outclassed by a MacBook Air now. I'll just go and buy the MacBook Air. And maybe that's part of Apple's plan. They want to release the MacBook Air so that people who really want more power will go get that, and then when they release the M2 MacBook Pro, they'll go get that. But there haven't really been major leaks as far as visuals on the M2 MacBook Pros, but you could assume they're being developed, but we just haven't seen them, and it seems like the MacBook Air will be coming first. But yeah, not too long ago, we were hearing about hackers that had leaked some images, some schematics of the new MacBook Pro models, and so you would assume that those would be the devices to introduce the M2 processor. But now here it's being introduced in a lower tier MacBook Air that looks just like the MacBook, that looks just like the MacBook Pro. Now, the performance might not be crazy because these devices will likely be fanless, but I would assume that an M2 MacBook Air would still beat an M1 MacBook Pro that has a fan. Otherwise, people looking to upgrade from the M1 MacBook Air would just go to the M1 MacBook Pro. So I'm hoping that the fact that these devices are leaking like really bad, like images and everything, are not a sign that they are coming very soon, or if they're coming soon, hopefully not before or just announced along with the new MacBook Pros as well, at least a 13-inch MacBook Pro. Heck, we've been waiting on the 16-inch M1 or M2 or M1X MacBook Pro And it just seems like nothing's really leaking on that besides what came from the hackers. But yeah, let me know what you think of these new M2 MacBook Airs. Are they intriguing to you? Would you be picking one up if you got a chance? Or are they confusing to you like they are to me? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll be chatting it up with you guys as always. Hit the like button and subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss as I cover your favorite tech and video games. And if you're into movies and TV shows, check out our sister channel, WeSibs. I do movies and TV shows, Jupiter's Legacy, Supergirl, The Flash, all those kinds of shows, sci-fi and stuff like that over there. So be sure to check that out as well. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm Chris Grant Jr. It's the Granite Geek Show.